Welcome to the ANEW Insight Podcast, empowering and inspiring your journey to optimal health. Hosted by Dr. Supatra Tovar, clinical psychologist, registered dietitian, fitness expert, and author of Deprogram Diet Culture. Rethink your relationship with food, heal your mind, and live a diet-free life. I follow my guests' journey to optimal health, providing you with the keys to unlock your own wellness path. Tune in and evolve with us. Hello and welcome. I am thrilled to have body-based healing practitioner, expressive arts therapy expert, and founder of Intuitive Self, Cathy Williams, with us today. Cathy, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I am very excited to pick her brain about all things somatic-based healing for trauma and the like. I am going to read a little bit about Cathy before we get started, and then we'll dive right into our questions. Cathy Williams is a body-based healing practitioner, expressive arts therapy expert, and the founder of Intuitive Self. She supports people in reconnecting with their bodies, creativity, and intuition as a pathway to healing trauma, stress, and depression. She and I are very aligned on these pathways. Drawing from her own recovery journey, Cathy blends somatic movement therapy, expressive arts, trauma-informed practice, and spiritual reflection to help individuals reclaim their sense of wholeness and self-trust. She is an award-winning author and speaker with over 17 years of experience in community development and social justice, bringing both compassion and depth to her work. Cathy holds a Master of Science and extensive training in somatic therapy, expressive arts modalities, and trauma healing. Her work centers on restoring the mind-body connection through creative expression, body awareness, and intuitive listening. Cathy, welcome to my podcast.
Yay.
Yay. Thank you so much for joining me. I asked you on the podcast because we are so aligned in so many different ways. A big part of my work with my clients is helping them return to their intuitive self through their intuitive voice. So I would love to hear what drew you toward this work, toward movement, creativity, and somatic approaches as primary healing tools. And how did your personal journey shape the work that you do today?
I stumbled into this work after I returned from some overseas projects. And this was many, many moons ago now, but I had been doing back-to-back projects overseas and had been in a way of living where I was very much in my head. I was very much in the must keep busy, must be go, 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 do. And I put this as just a sign that I'm an ambitious woman and was wanting to, make the most of every day. But I realized shortly after returning back to Melbourne, because I was so burnt out and quite jaded from the field of work that I had been giving myself to so devotedly, was that I had been creating and filling my days in this way as a coping mechanism, as a way of not actually giving myself the time of day to pause and recognize what was happening in my body and what my body was communicating with me. And it was around this time when I came back from overseas and was feeling quite lost and at a loss as to what to do now with my career. And I still wanted to work with people and I still wanted to support people and communities and to hear people's stories and to see how I could be part of that. But I needed to do it in a way that was much more sustainable. And so it was around this time that I was invited to what essentially was a women's circle, but the facilitator had just finished her dance movement therapy training. And it was the first space that I experienced movement and creative arts in a therapeutic way where, we didn't have to speak or name or identify what was happening within us, but we were able to give that story a different platform to express. And that was when I was really able to feel the depths of this sense of helplessness that I'd come back with, and this sense of real real exhaustion. And it was kind of this catalyst that I couldn't keep showing up to my work in that way. I couldn't keep living daily in that way. And when I experienced this women's circle and this workshop and these processes, I was really it was such a cathartic release for me on that day, but it also really showed me the potential of what this work could do. So I very enthusiastically asked, what is this work and how could I experience more of it? Who did she study with? Where are her mentors? And yeah, committed to researching and enrolling myself into various courses and going into mentorships with different pioneers in the field, and did this work for many years as a student, but then was able to start combining my community development and social justice work with these practices until it's now become a complete staple in my life, and
Wow.
something that I'm very passionate about.
I think certainly there's a running theme in my latest podcasts, but I've had so many people on my podcast with very similar uh, impetus to do the work that they're doing. And I think that it comes from conditioning, particularly people who identify as female. The conditioning that we receive as young children moving up on having to do and be and have it all.
Mm,
Do you think that that was a part of your burnout? What was really driving your productivity goals, and how exactly did that contribute to your burnout?
mm. Yeah, I've thought a lot about this, and there's different threads. I feel like there was this really there was a sense that I had to do everything right now, and that I really wanted to achieve a lot, and I felt like I had to squish it all into a really short period of time. Um, and I I think the overriding theme, which I didn't recognize at the time, of course, but was that when I was still, when I actually stopped in my busy days, I recognized how tired I was, and I recognized that there was something that I was ignoring and was purposely filling my days with. Um, and it felt good to be of purpose and to be of devotion and to be supporting community in this way and to feel valued in the work that I did. And I really needed that. And I feel like from a young age there were particular events in my childhood, my parents' divorce, for example, that I didn't quite understand or comprehend. And so those feelings had never been given space to be explored and to be expressed. Um, and so I think my way of throwing myself into my work was my way of coping and also distracting and numbing myself from those inner feelings.
Yes. Yes. I think, that is also part of most people, not just people who identify as female. Most people's
Mm.
conditioning is that we have to soldier on.
Yeah.
Don't we are not afforded the luxury of the time to process through things. It's better to just, put your head down and keep moving. And when we do that, and you can speak to this, I think, especially with what happens in the body, when we do that, something significant happens in our bodies. When we're repressing things or we're not dealing with things, what starts to emerge or what starts to happen in our bodies as a result?
Mm. I think it's, you know, one of the things I always say when it comes to the somatic movement therapy and somatic lens is that, this is in this framework, in this way of being, we are including the whole body in our assessment and our treatment. And what we know is that the body carries all of our experiences, it carries all of our stories. And that is carried in the way that we hold ourselves, the muscle tension, the movements that we do. And what we suppress doesn't go away, it gets stored and it becomes disease. And this is something that when we get curious about what we're actually holding in our body and be radically self honest about what we're experiencing and what the feeling is there and where we feel it in the body, we can start to curiously explore what's there to be expressed and give that space to be heard and seen and acknowledged and released and moved. And that has was a really, it was a revelation to me that this could be expressed in a way other than talk therapy, which I know has absolute value, and I had been doing it for many years. But I feel that the movement therapy side of things really complements what we say and what we talk about, because we can acknowledge where we're holding it in the body and give expression to it in a new way.
Yes, I do think that most people think of therapy as talk therapy. Certainly, you have the gamut. You have people who strictly focus on the talk part of therapy. You also have therapists who do a combination of both. That's definitely in my arena. And then you have the, somatic types of therapies. What or why are movement and expressive arts therapy so powerful in healing trauma, stress, and depression in ways that just talking can't? You mentioned it
Mm,
being stored, trauma or difficulties being stored in the body. How exactly do you utilize movement to help release that trauma?
yeah. So, one of the things that I always start with is getting people to acknowledge that they're in a body. So we can be in a pattern or a way of coping where we have disconnected from our bodies for whatever reason, whether we're numbing or distracting or we've dissociated from our body as a way of being able to compartmentalize and to live and to still stay functional.
Hmm.
And we can get caught up in our heads and create this story that if we stop to feel and if we were to pause, then we would actually be overwhelmed by all of the things we've been suppressing and go into a state of collapse, for example. So, what I always tend to start with, depending on what's presenting and depending on what people have come with, but it is to really foster that relationship with their body. So, to acknowledge that they're in a body, to bring in some gentle, breath and movement practices so that they can start to be aware of the body that they're in, acknowledge that body, and see what the body wants to say. So, for me, this work is really about cultivating that dialogue with self and being able to feel safe in the body, to then start to notice how the body is communicating and what the different signals are there. And I feel like this is a really important way to start, because when we're able to acknowledge the body in this way, we're also able to acknowledge our feelings and the emotions that are within us and that are rising at any given time, and learn ways that we can not only be compassionate to those parts of ourselves, but we can regulate those emotions and feel capable to handle them and to move through them when they come up during our day and outside of our sessions, obviously. Um, so that's sort of the entry point of where I start. And what I encourage is this really non-judgmental way of being with self. So when we are exploring different challenges or different themes or whatever is present, whatever has charge for my client at the time in that moment, we're getting curious about where that is in the body. What are the sensations that they're aware of? Notice how they're holding the body. And maybe it's in a closed frame because they're being quite protective. And it's not about changing anything as such, but just getting curious about that and seeing what's there that wants to be expressed. And that expression is through sound, it's through movement, and it's not, nothing's choreographed. I'm not directive with this. The prompts are very invitational to listen to the body and see how the body wants to adjust, or what are the impulses to move, and what's supportive right here, right now. And that could be something like bringing in some gentle touch to the body for comfort. It could be shaking the body out if there's an emotion that wants to be released. Um, it really varies depending on what we're working with, but the framework is very invitational, and it is giving expression through sound, through the body, and then onto the paper with different creative arts. So it's very explorative, it's very curious, and it's very, I'm not making meaning of what's happening. I'm just bringing their attention to different things that I'm observing and noticing. And if there is a particular movement that I see them do a few times, I'm like, okay, let's repeat that. Let's make that bigger. What does that movement want to say? How does it want to shift? How does it want to move further? Um, And this can lead to so many different revelations. It could be that there is a particular movement that feels really supportive to ground them. There could be a particular posture or gesture that when they do that, they're reminded of their strength. It could be that they express out onto the page and they'll make meaning of the different symbols that came out of their own drawing. And be able to make meaning of that, and see what is it of their experience that has come through in a way that their words or their mind couldn't comprehend.
I love this. And give me a picture of what you see happening at that release and after that release. I know that when I work with my clients and I help them in a somatic way, I can visually see areas of their body relaxing or releasing. What kinds of results do you see when people are tapping into where trauma or the pain is housed in
Mm,
their body and releasing it?
mm. I see, I guess the most common thing that I see straight up is um, an acknowledgement that it's been a really long time since they've
Mhm.
had that conversation with self. And
Yes.
Yeah, so it's, that the breathing will sort of soften, and their body will soften actually with their shoulders, with the tension. They'll loosen up a little bit. Um, I see a lot of the time, actually, I see people wanting to go straight into analyzing. So they wanna go straight to sort of the problem solving side of things, and that is part of our conditioning, right? That we want to bypass the feeling and go straight to, "Oh, but how do we solve this? How do we
Mhm.
fix the problem?" Sort of instantaneously.
Right.
Um, and what I encourage there more and more is, like, that will come, but, can we give our feelings space to actually be felt here, and get curious about that? I see a lot of, people moving in ways that sometimes it's slow to unfold, but people are starting to get more comfortable with moving, and there's a curiosity there because my prompts are so invitational, and we're bringing attention to parts of ourselves and ways of moving that isn't common, isn't part of their everyday. So there's this real curiosity in how they're moving, and a playfulness comes through as well.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, I love this, and I think that you and I are also very aligned in that we really try to help our clients return to their own intuition and their body wisdom. I would love to hear how you help clients learn how to listen to their bodies again. I have my own particular way, and I would love to gain more insight from your method.
Mm. So the way that I work is really weaving in movement processes and creative arts therapy. So there's a real combination here with the work that I do. And the processes come from seeking ways to connect them deeper with their body. So being aware of their breath, working out ways of somatic touch that feels really supportive and comforting for them, and bringing their awareness to the different responses that their body is having, and listening to that feedback. So
Mhm.
we'll often, you know, I'll get clients to bring in touch to their body when we first start working together. And not only does that resource them, but it gets their senses opening to what is that feedback. What does feel comfortable to me? What is uncomfortable to me? Where is this touch supportive, or is it heightening, for example? And so there's different inputs that come with this work that then allows them to get a really clear understanding of what is their yes and what is their no, and how do they want to meet themselves in this way. I bring in a lot of different music and movement prompts to get them familiar and comfortable with expressing themselves through the body and through different types of movement. And I use a variety of different creative movement prompts here. So this could be, exploring the room, exploring different levels of high, medium, and low, different shapes, big, small, playing with tempo, and just getting them into a state of playful moving. There's often prompts that encourage whatever story is inside to start to be expressed through the movement. And then we will, and also maybe that has different visualizations come in as well. If there's something that has come up in our session that might be a supportive landscape, for example, maybe we'll go there in our mind's eye and see what wants to come through in that exploration. And always paired with the movement, I have some creative arts. So the most accessible one for that is big butcher's paper or A3 paper and playing with different colors, lines, and shapes with pastel. And again, it's not about being an artist, but it is about continuing the exploration through what's come through onto the page. And it's always quite fascinating debriefing that process just to see how they felt in the expression of it, and then what is standing out for them on the piece that they've created. And, I'll have my own in my mind. I'll be like, "Oh, that's very curious there, what they've drawn there or what words have come out."
Mm.
But we can also use the art as a as a as a place to explore further. So we call these sort of keys. So they might be a particular, maybe there's a spiral shape that they've drawn. And so if that has been extra curious for them, or they're really drawn to that, I'll maybe it's somewhere where I'm like, "Oh, can you feel that in your body somewhere? What does that shape look like? What does that movement look like?" And this is when they're able to explore it or make meaning of it. So maybe that spiral shape was their heart, and it's a movement that is expanding their capacity to be open to relationship, bringing out the wisdom from the body that is from their own psyche, from their own body's dialogue, and then bringing it back into self so that they can create it as a resource or as an entry point for further connection to their body and their intuition.
Oh, I love this. It something we do as therapists more often with children than we do with adults. And I think it's so valuable to bring some of what we do with children into the adult arena because you're tapping into that right brain creativity, the connection to, something greater outside of yourself, the tapping into your intuitive self. We're so left brain problem solving oriented, stuck up in our minds as we, get older, and we lose that capacity to play. That's what I
Yes.
really want to encourage people to get out of this podcast half of an episode. We're out of time for this one, and we're going to really delve into this a lot more in the second half. But there is something really valuable, really freeing in tapping into our creativity and our intuition and our joy through just taking the mind offline a little bit and getting into the body and letting the body do more of the talking. We have become, I think, a little bit too conditioned to be up here, and we're a
Mm.
little divorced from down here. And if we can bridge that gap and tap in down here a little bit more, you start to hear intuitively the answers to whatever problem you're working on, especially the more connected you are to your body. That's a lot of the work that I do with my clients. So, Kathy, we are sisters on this. I am so excited to pick your brain a little bit further. We're out of time for this half, but will you come back and join me for the second half, please?
Yes.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. I really hope you tune in next time for the second half of this amazing interview with body based healing practitioner, expressive arts therapy expert, and founder of Intuitive Self, Kathy Williams.
Thanks for tuning into the ANEW Insight podcast. Please remember, the contents shared on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. You can find us anywhere podcasts are streaming, on YouTube at my.anew.insight and at anew-insight.com under the ANEW Insight podcast tab. And follow us on our socials at my.anew.insight on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more updates. Tune in next time and evolve with us.